Today we're going to be starting our geometry unit. Let's first talk about angles. An angle is basically two rays with a common endpoint. We know that the endpoint is where a ray begins. An angle is where I have two rays that share a common endpoint. Now we can have several different names for this angle. If we have a numeral inside this angle, then we can name it angle 1. Notice the angle symbol, please. Angle 1. Or we could call it according to the letters. In order, angle A, B, C. Now, the A and the C does not matter as far as order. I could call it CBA, but the B always is in the middle. The B has a special name. That common endpoint of the two rays is called its vertex. And the vertex, as you're naming it, is always the middle letter. Now, sometimes you will see that angle called just angle B, but oftentimes if I have more than one angle involved, more than one angle could have a name of B, so you want to go ahead and name it with the three-letter method. So an angle is named with three letters or a number, or in some cases we might call it by just one letter, its vertex. We measure angles in degrees. Let's say the measure of angle 1 is 70 degrees. We would then call it an acute angle. It's acute because its measure is less than 90 degrees. If I have another angle that is obtuse, like this one, we could say that its measure is 153 degrees. It's greater than 90 degrees. Now we did circle graphs. We worked on how to measure them using a protractor. Let me just quickly review that. You line your bottom of your protractor up with your bottom ray, or I should say what I call the base ray. And you see it's going to be about 60 degrees. Now I use the bottom numbers on this one, or excuse me, 70. I use the bottom numbers because I'm starting here at 0, not 180. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, so it's about 70 degrees. Any questions on how you measure an angle? Okay, so let's then go over the four types of angles. You have an angle that's 90 degrees. Show me with your arm what a 90-degree angle is. Okay, that's called a right angle. Good. Acute angle is less than 90 degrees. Remember, this symbol is not an angle symbol. It means it's less than. It's less than 90 degrees, and an obtuse angle is greater than 90 degrees. And then the fourth type of angle is what we call a straight angle, and it has a measure of 180 degrees. Now, if you don't have a protractor where you can measure exactly what the degrees are, you can do what I call the paper test to help you determine whether or not your angle is acute or obtuse. And what I do is I put the edge or the corner of a piece of paper right on the vertex. And if you can see, let me just draw a rectangle here and pretend like that's my edge of my paper. Okay, so if I'm going to put the edge of my paper right here. Okay, is the other angle out here somewhere where I can see it? No, so it's going to be up to acute. Whereas if I pull it over here, can I see the other ray part of my angle? Yes, so it's obtuse. And then if I put my piece of paper, the corner right there, it matches it perfectly, so it is a right angle. So that's what I call the paper test. Okay, now we're going to look at some special angle pairs. And this symbol means that they are congruent. All right, let's take a look at some of these special angle pairs. But before we do so, let's make sure you know what the congruency symbol means. It's an equal sign with a little squiggly on top. That means congruent, or the same measure. And I have that down here at the bottom. Congruent segments, congruent angles, they all have equal measures. They're the same. Now the first special pair of angles we have are actually four angles, but we're going to look at two of them that are formed from two intersecting lines. Give me a thumbs up if you know what intersecting lines are. Okay, good. They're lines that just cross each other. Vertical angles are angles opposite of each other. So we say angle 1 and angle 3 are what we call vertical angles. What's the vertical angle with 4? 4 and 2. So they're going to be exactly the same measurement. So we say angles 1 is congruent to angle 3, 1 and 3, and angle 4 is congruent to angle 2, and they're the same. So if 4 is 50 degrees, what's 2 have to be? What's the measure of angle 2? It has to be 50 degrees. Okay, then the other special pair are adjacent angles. Adjacent means you share a side. You share a side. Angle 4 is adjacent to angle 3. Angle 4 is also adjacent to what other angle? Angle 1. Very good. They share a side. So angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. Angle 2 and angle 3. Angle 3 and angle 4. And angle 4 and angle 1. Each angle actually has two other angles that it's adjacent to. It's kind of like who you sit by. You sit by somebody's to your right, somebody's to your left. Those are your adjacent partners. So I just want to point out too that adjacent angles share a side, but they're not necessarily congruent. Okay, so make sure that you know that they're not congruent. Congruent just means that they have equal measurements. Okay, that concludes our first lesson on angles.